Now, when I first heard that THQ was set to release a WWF title for the PlayStation, well, I'm gonna be honest, first thing I thought of was this. And that left me kind of nervous. I mean, I was always so amazed how they could create such a legendary series of games on the N64 and bomb so bad on the PlayStation. So in March of 2000, when SmackDown hit homes in the US, I was quite surprised at how good the game actually was. But was it really good, or was it just good in the sense that I was expecting a disaster of a game? Well, let's see. Now, if you watched SmackDown at the time of the game's release, then you've already seen the intro to the game, as it's just the same intro they used for the TV show. I would have liked to see something exclusive to the game, but, you know, it is what it is. The one thing that stands out to me about the first time I played SmackDown was the menus. I really didn't like them back in 2000, and I really don't like them now. The game features a pretty packed roster. It's the first WWF title to feature the Dudley Boys, who had just jumped ship from ECW. Other than that, though, the selection is almost identical to WrestleMania 2000. Not as many diva options here, though. The arena options are pretty limited. You can only select from the SmackDown, Raw, and House Show stages, but you can change the ring apron to feature pay-per-view logos, though it does look a little strange to have the SmackDown stage with a Royal Rumble ring. I guess they wanted to give us options here, but they should have just included complete arenas.
1, 2, is this on? Yo, Jimmy, hit me with that Triple H. Yeah, you let the music keep playing, Mr. Dumb. Yo, tell me whose time it is now.
This is all we get for entrances. Your wrestler's Titantron video playing with the in-game model walking in front of it like some kind of green screen effect. I know it's a small thing to some people, but this really upset me back in the day. I mean, look at this. They have winning animations down to a T. They couldn't just put these in for the entrances? Was it because of time constraints? Was it laziness? Or did somebody actually sit back and say, these entrances are cool? If you've played a WWE game in the last 13 years, you'll probably recognize the name YUKE. They've developed most of the company's games since the first SmackDown. And this is where the well-known game engine got its start. Obviously, it's been tweaked and refined a whole lot since the year 2000, but the similarities are still here. It's a very fast-paced, almost arcade-like style of gameplay. Some people loved it, and some people were mad that it wasn't more similar to the N64 wrestling titles. I had mixed feelings about it. For me, there's a little too much rolling around, jumping, attacking, and not enough emphasis on grappling. Another thing that's always stuck out to me is how quick your opponent recovers. Half the time your opponent will get up even before you do after an attack. Some of the move animations look pretty good here, but a lot of them look quick and a bit sloppy. I do, however, have to applaud this game for being the first WWF title, in my opinion, to perfect the people's elbow. Attitude failed miserably, and WrestleMania 2000 did a pretty good job, but it was a pain trying to center it just right. This game does all the work for you. Just stand by your opponent's head and press L1. And that brings us to special moves. This is the first title in which you can store finishers by filling your spirit meter. You can store up to 5 at a time, and you can even start the match with up to 5 if you want to. When you're in the right position and your opponent is in a dazed state, you'll see the SmackDown logo flash over your HUD. Press L1 to perform your finisher. It's a huge improvement over the stupid button combinations seen in the Acclaim series. Musically, this game just does not work for me. The menu music is strange, the in-game music is annoying. I mean, come on, just have a listen. I guess some people might like that, but it's just not for me. I do, however, like the way this game looks. That is, most of the game. The backgrounds, like the crowd and stage area, are pretty pixelated, but the wrestlers themselves actually look pretty good. Each wrestler has realistic height and body type, and attires and faces look spot on, and they're really good for a 2000 release. Along with your standard match types, you'll find a hardcore match, which is pretty cool, but the weapons don't give the same satisfaction as past WWF games. I mean, they feel light and rarely knock your opponent to the ground, but it is a must-have match type for an Attitude Era game. There's also a cage match, and while it's nothing special, again, it is a must-have for this time period in wrestling. I mean, as you would expect, you're going to want to knock your opponent out long enough to climb out of the cage. It's not terribly challenging, though on the harder difficulty, your opponents won't stay down as long. One of the big selling points for a wrestling game from this era was the ability to fight backstage. I mean, come on, WCW even made a whole game that takes place backstage. I mean, this was a big deal in its day. SmackDown features some pretty cool backstage areas. As a matter of fact, this is the first WWF title where you can actually take the battle into the backstage areas. And that alone sold a lot of copies. Royal Rumble mode makes an appearance here, and just like a lot of other wrestling titles from the time, it's pretty easy to eliminate people. Actually, I'd have to say this game probably takes the cake for easiest. If you wanted to, you could just stand at the ropes and just eliminate each person the second they step into the ring. But it is a fun mode, and thanks to its quick style of gameplay, you don't have to commit to an hour-long match. There's also an I Quit match, which is pretty cool, but good luck trying to keep your opponent down long enough to grab the mic and make it back over to him in time. So far at this point in gaming, the only tag team matches I actually enjoyed were those in the N64 THQ games. And unfortunately, they didn't win me over here. Most of the match is just a big mess of wondering who the legal man is and trying to figure out how to keep your opponent inside of the ring. There's a special referee match, which is pretty fun with 2 players, but it's kind of pointless on your own, unless you want to be the ref and just mess with the AI for a bit. If you feel like committing to something that'll take half your life to compete, there is a season mode. It features a few unlockables and also has a few repetitive cutscenes, but other than that, I never saw much appeal in it. And I believe you can actually get a 10-year run out of it. That's 10 years in video game time, by the way. Create a pay-per-view mode is here, and by now it's been in a few WWF games and really hasn't added anything revolutionary, so no reason to go into depth about it. There's also a few other game modes like King of the Ring. Missing are modes like Ladder Match, Table Match, Hell in a Cell, but we would get those eventually. Now, if you're like me and the rest of the world, then Create a Wrestler mode is extremely important in a wrestling game. Actually, I probably spend more time creating wrestlers than I do playing the actual game. SmackDown does not do a good job in this department. You're given a bunch of pre-designed body parts, most of which are WWF wrestlers that are already in the game. Now, this is cool if I wanted to create Triple H with an alternate attire or something, but how am I supposed to create Macho Man or Scott Hall or anybody really if all I can select from is presets? Even Attitude had a better Create a Wrestler mode. It was uglier, but it was a little better. This is probably the worst Create a Wrestler mode I've seen in a WWF game, maybe ever. For me, SmackDown left a lot to be desired. It was a little better than I suspected it would be, but at the same time it wasn't as good as what I was playing on the Nintendo 64 already, so it didn't have a huge replay value for me. Yet, I was intrigued to hear that there was a sequel already in the works and only 9 months away from hitting store shelves. Though there was another WWF game also 9 months away that I was a lot more excited about, and it would take the wrestling game world by storm.